Welcome once again to the Weber County Republican Party virtual Meet the Candidate Night. Tonight we're meeting with our candidates for House District 11. House District 11 is on the south end of Weber County and actually crosses over into Davis County. Now, we won't hold that against them. We may even allow our Davis County friends to watch this video later. But we appreciate, in any case, delegates from either county or both counties tuning in to learn about the candidates in this race and to do your due diligence in this unique environment that we find ourselves in. Again, we understand that this is a different process. The delegates that we're speaking to were elected last cycle, and so we really do appreciate you stepping up and serving this vital role in our election process. So again, thanks for joining us tonight. We were here with our candidates, Kelly Miles, who's our incumbent representative. Say hello, Kelly.
Hi, how are you?
And Elizabeth Carlin, who's not a first-time candidate. I think first time in this seat, but I believe she also ran in House District 9 some time ago. So Elizabeth,
long time ago.
That's right. Say hello, Elizabeth.
Hello.
Okay. Now, we will also be putting this up on a podcast. So this will be, like Hot Rod Hundley used to say, a simulcast event. So you'll have a chance to listen and to watch at your leisure leading up to our state convention, where this particular election will take place on April 25th. Again, thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Ryan Wilcox. I'll be your moderator, and we have our producer, Jake Sawyer, here in the background. You may or may not hear Jake, but he is there, and he is always listening. He's a little bit like Santa Claus, so you better be good. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Our first issue tonight, well, not issue, but opportunity tonight is just to give us an introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're running for office, what you'd like us to know about your campaign, your candidacy, right out of the gate. We'll go ahead and go to each candidate at random times. So sometimes I will ask a question, and it will be Elizabeth that starts first, and sometimes it'll be Kelly. I'm using what's called a randomizer app on my phone, so I don't know who's going to get what question first, but the other one will always follow with two candidates. So you do know what's coming to you next. With that, we'll start tonight with our incumbent representative, Kelly Miles.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Ryan. Like you said, I'm Kelly Miles, and I've had the privilege of serving this district in the Utah House for the last 4 years. And I'm asking that I be sent back so that I can continue that and continue fighting for our district. I first ran for office because I wanted to shape the policy that affects all of us on a daily basis. You know, I've been lucky enough to have a set of principles that I've used to guide me and my family toward fulfilling lives. And these principles are principles like compassion, love, and personal responsibility. And I weigh those principles heavily each time I cast a vote at the legislature. And I pledge that I'll continue to do so if I'm elected. You know, we enable people to live their lives in the fullest. And we need to have laws and implement these principles on a state level so that people can live their lives free of coercion and without overregulation. And while I fully believe that Utah's the best place to live, I sometimes worry about our future, and maybe not so much for my kids or my grandkids, but for my grandkids, excuse me. I think that I sometimes ask myself, will they be able to breathe clean air? Will they struggle with mental illness? Will they be able to worship according to the dictates of their own conscience? And can they afford higher education? You know, I live about 35 yards from my folks, from where I grew up. And I wonder if my children, or especially even grandchildren, will have that opportunity. So I want to make sure that we have the kind of laws and the kind of regulations in place that'll allow our kids and grandkids to live their lives to the fullest. I have served in the past as a county delegate and state delegate and been involved and hosted the neighborhood caucuses. And so I've been involved in the Republican Party. And I consider myself a conservative and represent, and I pledge that I would continue to represent the district. I think this is one of the greatest districts in the state, District 11, and I'm grateful for the support. And
okay, and Elizabeth.
I'm Elizabeth Carlin, and I've lived in Utah now almost 42 years. No, closer to 44 years. I did run earlier, and that was when Weber County was a very Democrat Party county. I've been part of the group that has helped this become a Republican Party, and I've been involved in this district for a number of years. I was the secretary to the chair of the district, and then I was the vice chair, and after that I was the chair. I thoroughly enjoy this district. I do think that there are many very wonderful people in it. I believe that it is important to use our platform. It's a good Republican platform. It talks about having property and religious freedom and rights to life. And those are all things that I believe in. I live in a home with 4 generations. I'm the oldest. And the youngest are little 2- and 4-year-olds. So I'm looking forward to having a better environment, not just for my grandchildren, but for my great-grandchildren. I think it's very important that we have a small government, one that is easily accessed, one that is very aware of our needs. I was very active with this tax reform that happened just in December. And I have lately been home because of the scare that we have with this virus. I have been through a virus scare before. I had polio as a girl, and then we were isolated, and we were also put into like we are now, where everybody isn't with anybody else. And I think that we are doing a lot of damage to our system right now because we haven't decided who is ill and who is not. Is that chat saying that I'm almost out of time? I can't tell. I think it's important for us to have abilities for us as common human beings to make decisions and do things that need to be done. And it looks like I have 30 seconds left. I would appreciate everybody to consider me as their candidate. Thank you.
Hey, thank you both. Our first question out of the gate tonight is not necessarily about the specific position that we're talking about and serving in the state house, but more your general view of the issue. And that is, what is the proper role of government? Sort of a classic Republican question that we got lots of delegates asking. What is the proper role of government? And we'll start with Elizabeth tonight.
I believe the proper role of government is to have services like police and education and things like that. But it is not the proper role of government to dictate to people what they should and shouldn't do. I do not believe that government should be so excessive that we have to pay so much out that we cannot provide for our very own needs.
Okay, and Representative Miles.
Thank you, Ryan. I believe the proper role of government. I agree with Elizabeth. I think I guess I would explain it in the way that its role is to do things for the people that we can't do for ourselves. Transportation issues, public safety, things like that. And I believe that the best role for government is at the local level. I think if the government tries to rule from too far away or too high up, then we need to keep things on the state level, on the county level, on the city level, even to our neighborhood and how we interact with each other. But I think government's role should be limited, and it should be representative of the people.
Okay, thank you very much. Our follow-up question to that is, what is the role then of a state representative? And we'll go ahead and start with Representative Miles this time.
Well, I think the role of the state representative is we have 75 House districts, and as a state representative of one of those districts here in District 11 is to be the representative of those people. It's a representative form of government, not necessarily a democracy. So the role of the representative is to explain to the constituents their beliefs, their commitment to the platform, and then apply those and use their background, their experience in order to represent the people. And that way, each district throughout the state of Utah has the opportunity, has an equal representation in the House, so that we can accomplish those things that better the entire state. And a very populous district, for instance, or city can't rule over the smaller districts because we have that equal representation.
Okay, Elizabeth, what is the role of a state representative?
I believe that we should have a smaller government, one that is closer to the people. In the last 2 years, for each session, there were 1,500 bills that were going to be numbered. That's 3,000 new laws or changes to laws. And I frankly think that the least that we have intrusive wise from the government, the better we are. It should be smaller. It should be more careful as to what it does for and to the citizens that it has in its care.
Okay, one of the questions that, well, I guess really the first thing that we ask of our elected representatives when they first take office is to swear an oath. That oath is a promise to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of this state, and the third part is to execute the duties of your office with fidelity. Tell us what that oath means to you and how you intend to fulfill that promise. Go ahead and start with Elizabeth.
We live under a constitution. We are a republic. We are not a democracy. So when I'm there, I am a representative of the people for who have elected me and those in the district. I believe that we need to be aware of what our Constitution asks us to do, along with the Constitution of Utah. For example, we have not a law in our Constitution to have people return if we don't like them in office. We also do not have the ability to have oh, I've lost my train of thought. That's not good. I just think that it should be more small and less intrusive. Thank you.
Okay, and Kelly, your oath of office.
Thank you. As I recall, when I took the oath of office in the 2016, we had to state something that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the state of Utah. And I take that as a sacred responsibility. And, our Constitution is, in my estimation, a sacred document. It talks about our religious freedoms, our right to bear arms, and due process requirements. And we have to be fully committed to those principles. Another really interesting thing that the federal government ought to take note of is that the Utah Constitution requires a balanced budget. And I'm grateful that we have that in our Constitution. And so it's critical that those elected officers will defend that Constitution. And I pledge that I will.
Thank you both. And, that is a very important part of this process. And frankly, I think a lot of constituents wonder that about that sometimes when they read things in the paper. Do they really care about that, and how do they make decisions based on those promises? So thank you again for your answers there. The next question relates to your interaction with constituents, and that really is, how do you envision interacting with constituents? I guess maybe in Representative Miles' case, it's how have you done that? How do you hope to do that in the future? But how do you envision interacting with constituents, and particularly in light of the situation that we're in now and going forward, how that's changed? And we'll go ahead and start with you, Representative Miles.
Thank you. I think interaction with constituents is critical. And, this COVID-19 has caught us all off guard. And, we're all trying to get through these tough times. And so I recognize in the campaign process, it's by video chat or by phone calls or emails or texts. But, in the years past, as I've had the opportunity to serve, I don't think our constituents realize what an impact they play. When we get emails or when I get a phone call, or, it's hard to take every phone call, but emails and texts, if they come from a constituent, I definitely pay attention. Now, obviously, I get conflicting positions, but it's helpful to know. And even when someone brings up a point, it makes you stop and ponder, because you may not have seen that point. So whether they come in person, the Utah House, you can come down during the session and give us a note. And if we're in between votes or we can step out, we will come out and visit in person. But I'm open to any form of communication. Well, just not necessarily in person while we're in this stay-at-home.
Okay, looks like we're out of time there again, Representative, and
Thank
go
you.
straight to Elizabeth.
Could you restate the question, please?
How do you envision connecting with constituents?
Okay, I do know that every legislator has an email and that can be used. Some of the things that I have used in the past is telephone, email, and I am able to video chat. I believe it's important to be open and to be able to be listening. I have had quite a great amount of work here in this district, and I do know people who are here in the Weber part of the district. I believe that we need to honor people's ability to think and do for themselves, and that their opinions are important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. We'll now move into more of the policy-related questions. And this is sort of the fun part of the discussion for me. So hopefully you'll enjoy this as well. Our first one tonight is about our state's public education system. The question really is, what would you change about our state's public education system? Would you support a voucher system? What support should the state provide to parents, perhaps who homeschool or their children, or either in connection with this situation that we're in now? I think we're all homeschooling, and so we're all learning about that process. COVID-19 or otherwise going into the future. So again, what would you change about our state's public education system? Elizabeth?
You asked me, a retired school teacher who happens to be on the UEA retired board. Okay.
That's a great person to answer that question.
You know, I have been hearing for years, our system is broken, our system is broken, our system. I have been to Russia, I have been to Egypt, I have been to Cambodia and to Vietnam in the last few years. Their system may be broken, ours is fine. We have the ability to work with people and help teachers and parents and students learn. Do I like the voucher system? Can't stand it. I don't want people to have to go to government and say, Mama, may I have help? That is not the role of government. Thank you.
All right, Representative Miles.
So I think anything we can do to keep our education system at the local level. My wife's taught school for 31 years now, and she's actually retiring this spring.
Wow.
She teaches second grade over at H. Child, and she's quite worried about whether she's going to get to be able to go back and tell those kids goodbye. It's kind of a scary time we're in, but I know from visiting with her and other teachers that allowing the teachers to teach and allowing them and giving them the resources and giving them the kind of funding, you know, a recent bill that passed in the House talks about allowing education to have a little more flexibility in some of the property tax issues and the money that they're raising. I think that's a good idea. And I think that we need to support our public school systems. I like the idea of charter schools and some of those things we're trying. I'm not a fan of the voucher system. And I think that if we'll continue to support and get out of the way and allow the teachers to teach, then I think our school systems will continue to rise in their excellence.
Okay, thank you. Second one, we'll stick with the Second Amendment. Dun-dun-dun, where's my drum roll? Right here. What is your position on the Second Amendment, number one? And then specifically, do you support constitutional carry? That question came in a number of times. I will start right away with Representative Miles.
I'm a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment. It's one of the basic constitutional rights, and I think any infringement on that is uncalled for, and we should fight against. I've grown up with guns and hunted, and I have a concealed carry permit, and I think that we need to protect those rights in any way we can. I support constitutional carry. I see that that was part of the original Constitution. We have the right to bear arms, and we can continue to do that. So I don't support any infringement. There were a number of bills brought up this year, and that were in an effort to restrict or in a roundabout way to restrict and bring restrictions against gun control, and none of them passed out of the legislature this year.
Okay, Elizabeth, Second Amendment.
I believe that the Second Amendment is there for a reason. It is so that our government will not grow to the point where it gets in control of us. Many, many times when dictators are in charge, the people that are citizens and live in the country are unarmed. I do have a gun. When I had to get it, I had to register it. I think that's an abomination. Why should I have to register a gun in a country where there aren't supposed to be any laws that infringe on my ability to have an arm? I have guns in the house. There are people in the house that go and hunt, and they have a number of guns. And so red laws, no, I don't think that's the proper way of doing it. I think we should loosen the laws, not tighten them up.
Okay. Our next question, I'll give you a little bit of background on. The federal government in the state of Utah owns about 2/3 of the land in the state. While essentially no one in Utah wants to disturb our national parks, our national recreation areas, military installations, most federal land in Utah doesn't fit into any of those categories. And keeping all of that land under federal control inflicts great harm on our state's economy, environment, tax base, affordable housing, and probably most importantly, public education. How much of Utah should the federal government own? And what changes to state or federal law would you support to seek a remedy in this area? Go ahead and start again with Representative Miles.
Thank you. That's a critical question. It's an important question because it's ridiculous the amount of land that the federal government owns or controls in the state of Utah. Like you mentioned in the introductory question, it hurts our public education because the land trusts and the school funds, it doesn't allow any money or any development. Now, I agree that there are some pristine national parks and we have some state parks. And I think we as a state and we as a people know which ones need protecting. But there is nothing wrong with, we should be developing and using these lands. If the federal government has 2/3, that's twice too much. At least that ought to be cut in half. And we ought to continue to lobby our federal representatives in the House and the Senate to help those back east that think they need to decide what to do with Utah land. They can decide what to do with their own land and let us Utahns decide what we want to do with our land.
Okay, thank you, Representative. Elizabeth.
Well, a few years back, the federal government shut down. And who kept the federal places open like Arches? It was us Utahns through our government, through our state government that did that. Now, if you go and take a look, the land that we are losing to housing is our farmland, our orchards.
Yeah.
I moved into Riverdale and there were orchards all over the place. I have a small one in my backyard. But if you go and look for the large ones, they don't exist anymore. So we have a problem that is here that I don't think people are really thinking about, and that is, where's the food going to come from? If the federal government continues to own the land, how are we going to use it? I know that in the past there have been cattle people that have been restricted and have had to kill their cattle because the federal government came in and said, no, you can't use the water on this land, although they had used it for years. So I would like to see the land given to Utah like it should be, and then put out for people to own, because we need to have more farms. We need to have more places for people to live. And we don't have the farms.
Okay, looks like we're out of time. Thank you very much to you both. Okay, our next question relates more to what you've done in the past. And so this question is, really what in your experience, in your history, in your life, do you believe has most prepared you for this role? What have you done? What have you been through? What have you learned that you believe has most prepared you for this role? We'll go ahead and start with Elizabeth this time.
Oh, that's so hard. By the time I was 15 years old, I had lived in 6 countries and I had gone around the world. I have seen a lot of this earth and a lot of the people in it. I have a rich experience behind me. I have raised my children, 3 of them. I have now grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I think that I have a very deep experience to draw on. I had polio as a girl, and this quarantine has been very frightful to people. But I've been in quarantine before, and it isn't something that's frightful. So I think that what I can draw on is my rich, diverse experiences.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. I have had 5 different careers. The last one was in teaching. As a student, I have been in private schools, religious schools, homeschooled, and in our public schools. I have a diverse experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Miles.
Well, I've got to say that probably the thing that's helped me prepare to continue to serve if reelected is the past 4 years, having served at the legislature, having had an opportunity to serve on the standing committees, Health and Human Services, Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice, Higher Education, Appropriations, and learning how to deal with the budget issues and such. But even before that, I've always played a strong role in our community. I've lived here in South Ogden and the Ogden area for my entire, well, since I was 6 years old, and so 50 plus years. And so I know the community. I know the people that live here and around us. I have a legal background, and the law is moving more and more in the direction of negotiations and collaborative, and that's helped me in my service as a state representative. I've served on Boys and Girls Club and the after school program, and seeing what a great program and the needs that these programs and Ogden Weber Applied Technology College and helping there and at the university. So I think, and then just being a father and a husband and a community member, it helps shape who you.
Okay. Looks like we're out of time there again. Just going to move on to our next question here. It really a follow-up to that one. The legislative session is pretty short. It starts in January, right after you're sworn in for the new session, and is over by March, right? By mid-March. And then you have the rest of the year to think about it. In presidential terms, we talk about the first 100 days as if they're somehow magical. What are you going to accomplish in the first 100 days? But because of our shortened legislative session, our abbreviated, I should say, legislative session by comparison to some, what do you want to accomplish? What are you going to focus on right out of the gate? What are you most excited to work on when you're sworn in? Imagine that you're sworn in right away to this next term. Elizabeth, what would you like to do?
I would like to see how many laws we can take and get off the books. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I had a young girl that came into my home, and she was not out of high school yet, and she was 18. Now there's a law that says that I can't do that anymore. I think we have too many restrictive laws, and I would like to get rid of an awful lot of them. Thank you.
Hey, Representative Miles.
Well, I've been working on well, let me say first that I'm grateful that we have only a 45-day legislative session. You know, we're a citizen legislature. We bring a diverse backgrounds, and I'm afraid if we lengthened the session, we would lose that. There would be a lot of professionals and non-professionals and workers and everybody that couldn't do it. And so, but that means we have to work even that much quicker, especially when we have to balance the budget during that 45-day session. But I think our state's been suffering from mental health and addiction issues. And I think there's a lot of good work that can be done there. Weber County Mental Health has done some wonderful things. They're using best practices and best evidence, and they've accomplished some cures and treating people. And I think there's an opportunity to provide that kind of care and treatment throughout the state and bless the lives of people. And so that's an area that I would continue to work on.
Okay, very good. And thank you both for taking the time. We have time for just a few more questions tonight. One of those regarding our tax situation. The legislature over the past year has invested quite a bit of time and effort into a tax reform package that ultimately failed spectacularly. We saw it pass in a special session only to be repealed a few short weeks later. Largely due to the fact that there was a referendum that was circulated and passed, or appeared to have been on that path at least. Now, that those issues that led to that tax reform package still exist. There are still some structural challenges that need to be addressed. So the first question is, what was your position on the tax reform that was attempted perhaps on the referendum? And then what are your ideas? What do you propose, given where we're at right now? Those, like I said, those other conditions still exist. How do you propose we move forward? We'll go ahead and start with Elizabeth on this one.
Okay, I know the movement well. There were 300 of us on the first day and 26,000 on the last day. We went from having to have 117,000 signatures, and the unofficial count was 180,000 signatures that we got in a very, very short time. I am fiscally very conservative. If I don't have money, I don't go and do it. I raised my children, and I have not had the support of government to do it. I either was working or something else was happening. I believe that I have to tighten my belt, and so does government. I do not think that we should have double taxation, and that was what was happening with the service tax. People already were paying income tax, and then they were having to have separate accounts and a sales tax. The other thing is, I don't think that it's the role of government to say, oh, you have a need, so come and ask me and I'll help you out. And that was also in that bill. I believe that we need to tighten down the hatches, and we need to be able to live within our means. And legally, we have to. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Miles.
Thank you. When there was we passed the tax reform. It was the second largest tax reduction in the state, in the history of the state. $160 million would have been the net reduction in taxes. Now, I'll admit, I didn't like the tax on food, but it was an expansive tax bill, and part of it required an increase in tax on food. I would have liked to remove that from the bill, but that wasn't an option. I supported the tax reform, and then when the people spoke and gathered the signatures, we repealed it the second day of the session. And then we went back to the drawing board to continue to deal. We don't have a tax revenue problem. Like you said, it's a structural problem. And we've got to figure out a way to balance the general fund with the education fund. And we did that with Senate Bill 357, and we're hoping that the public will support and go along with education and allow the Constitution to be provided for education, children, and those with disability. And I would continue to work in that direction.
Okay, thank you very much. There's, directly related to the tax issue is the situation that we find ourselves in now. I think I mentioned before that we have a dramatically different budget scenario facing us than we did when the legislature ceased operations 3 weeks ago. What we're looking at now, I know that there's a special session that's just been scheduled. There may be another one later this year to deal with that. how do you propose that there's a two-part question. One, reduce the tax burden on our small businesses and economy here in the state, and two, reduce the regulatory burden. For this question only, you'll have 3 minutes to answer. So both reduce the tax burden and the regulatory burden to help stimulate our local economy. First, we'll start with Representative Miles.
Thank you. Those are excellent questions because, like I mentioned earlier, this COVID-19 has just, I mean, it's like nothing anybody has ever experienced. And I think we're doing the best we can. It's having a horrible impact on our small businesses. There needs to be some tax relief and some tax. I think the fact that the tax filing deadline was postponed until July 15th, while it presents its own set of problems from a budgetary standpoint. Right. And that's one of the reasons for the special session, is to deal with the fact that we won't have that income coming in and we'll have to adjust the budget. But I think there are numerous things that we can do to relieve that tax burden. You know, this stimulus for small businesses, and it doesn't need to be a handout. It needs to be helping these small businesses and on the way, so that they can continue to support and pay their employees, so that they can come back even more vibrant and better. I agree that we've got to reduce the regulations that prevent businesses from starting up. I mean, Utah is known as a great entrepreneurial spirit. You look at all the businesses that start up in every capacity, whether it's medical devices or computer oriented or manufacturing, outdoor life. Weber County's got some wonderful small businesses that take advantage of the outdoors. We've got to open the way to allow these businesses to have a chance to reach out and become successful without the burdensome regulations that government seems to want to impose.
Okay, Elizabeth?
I do agree that we do need to have fewer regulations. I also think that with our tax, that is our income tax, it needs to stay the way it is under the auspices of the Constitution as it is now. Because in other states where those things have been lifted, their group of legislators got a little carried away and spent that money because it all went into the same pile. I think we have to cut things we do at homes. When we don't have money, we don't go and do certain things, and we've got to be able to do the same thing in government. And yes, the regulations need to be really looked at. I think that's one reason why our economy in the United States is getting better, because Trump went in and said, for every regulation that you bring to me, you have to have 2 that you're going to take off. And I think that is a wise thing to do here. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, our next question came from a very specific delegate who I'll tell you about later. You may get an idea when you hear the tenor of the question who sent this in. This is not one of our county delegates, I'll give you that. Okay, should any person in Utah be denied equal protection under the law based solely on whether the person in question has been born? Representative Miles.
Will you repeat that question? I'm not sure the gist of it.
Should any person in Utah be denied equal protection under the law based solely on whether that person or the person in question has been born?
Absolutely not. We've got to protect the rights of the unborn. If I understood the question, I don't think there's any question that we have to protect those that are have the least ability to protect themselves. And that includes our unborn children and even elderly, that we as a society have that duty and that responsibility. So those unborn children should have the right and the protection and the freedoms that we allow persons. And we need to protect and continue to fight against abortion and continue to protect the unborn and the rights that they have.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
You would ask me that question. I went and listened to the Planned Parenthood people come and explain why our American families were so terrible and the Russians' way of doing things was so good. And they had a 4-point program to destroy the American family. All 4 points were in our law here in Utah by 1982. I am very pro-life. I had to wait many, many years before I had my own children. One of them I adopted. He was an abandoned child. And so I did something that normally people don't do. I charged abandonment and adopted him. Life is precious. Every single child is different. They're unique and they have gifts given to them that all of us can have. It'll help our society. But instead, you're nilly-willy killing both the boys and the girls now. And I am so sad that happens in our society.
Okay, thank you. That question, by the way, was submitted by Senator Lee. So now, our senior senator, I figured I'd sneak in one for him.
That was nice. Nice.
Okay. The next question relates to something that is difficult, that comes up every session and that you will deal with and have to take positions on. And that is, we'd like you to identify ways in which the state government picks winners and losers in the economy. Indicate whether you support or oppose that approach. This happens a lot of times through the Governor's Office of Economic Development. There's all sorts of, we'll just say, deals that get cut for recruiting businesses. There's a lot of debate about the validity of that. Oftentimes, we'll hear from those who are here already that maybe even in the same industry. That have a dramatically different perspective. So what is your perspective on that? Tell us about how Utah picks winners and losers in the economy and what your position is. Elizabeth, we'll start with you this time.
Oh, I have been saying all along, our government really does reach down into our pockets and into our business. And that is one area where I don't think we need to be. I know why we went into it. I know that we were trying to be more economically stable. I think we can get that same thing done in different ways.
Okay, Representative Miles.
Thank you. So I think the greatest thing we have going for us in the state of Utah and in the United States as a whole is our free market system. And each business ought to stand on its own merits. I don't think it's right for government to pick winners and losers, whether it's through GOED or whether it's through tax incentives and yet it's a kind of a fine balance. We want to support economic growth and, we all want our children to have good jobs and to be able to stay in the state of Utah and not have to move out. So we've got to support business growth and such, but I think it has to be on such a limited basis. And I think Utah is such a great place to live, with everything that it offers, the people, its industry, the outdoors, that I think businesses are going to want to come here because of the industry of the people, the educated people. And so I think we need to rely more on that than these economic incentives.
Okay, thank you. For our second to last question here, we're going to move into a little bit of your motivation. Please explain to us, tell us why you're a Republican. What does it mean to you to be a conservative? What that word even means in the context of being a legislator. maybe describe your approach a little bit to public policy. So maybe the summary question is that first one: why are you a Republican? Representative Miles.
Thank you. So I think that's an easy question. All the Republican platform, you know, the right to life, it supports the right to bear arms and the freedom of religion. It's just, it gets it right, and I line up with those principles. It's the way I was raised, and I think it blesses people's lives. The lack of government intrusion and involvement and overregulation, you know, allowing people the freedom to represent and to do those things. Now, there has to be laws and some restrictions so that we're a well-behaved society, but those need to be limited. And I'm a Republican because I agree with all those ideals, and I see that it brings happiness. I've seen it in my life and in the life of my family, and it's what I envision each time that there's a vote, and each time that we have to make a decision on a state level. Is, can this be done by free enterprise? Can it be handled outside the role of government? And if so, that's where it should be taken care of. But I'm proud to be a Republican, and I'm grateful for the guidelines and the principles that it's established.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Well, I was raised in a mixed family. My mother was a Democrat and my father a Republican, and I have found that his side of the family have been Republicans since the Civil War, when the Republican Party first began. I have read the platforms of both. I am very pro-life. I believe in agency. I believe that we can do anything that we put our minds to doing, and I support the platform that we have. It's not always been as conservative as it is now. The platform that we have at the national level is the most conservative platform, pro-life platform that we've ever had. I think people can do if they just have the freedom to do. I think there are more good-hearted people on this earth than there are those that are not. And I value freedom. I value the republic that we have. And I was instrumental in helping Weber become Republican. I'm not going to change my mind. I think it's a good set of values that we have in this party. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I lied to you. There's two more questions. That wasn't the second to last. I almost missed a really important one that got asked many times. So for those listening again, these questions were submitted by delegates to the county, and we've basically collated them and are asking those that have been most asked of these candidates. The first one, you know, we are in the midst of a discussion in the caucus convention system, right? We are preparing for our county convention next week, and then the state convention the week following, where your race will be decided. And that really is possible because of that system, this interaction with the delegates, this opportunity for them to connect with you. Would you support legislation repealing Senate Bill 54 from 2014, recognizing the right of political parties to determine the means by which they select and nominate candidates? Representative Miles.
You know, I think one of the strongest points the state of Utah has, and the reason that we've been effective and one of the best governed states, is because of our convention and caucus system. I'm not seeking signatures. I'm putting my trust in the convention and the state delegates. And I think being able to communicate with those delegates and have that relationship and being able to have that vetting is critical. And I think that if there was legislation, I think I would support that. I think that the convention is tried and true, and I think at this point that we ought to support that convention. That the Republican Party ought to have that ability, as any party should. And so I support the caucus and convention system.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth.
I'm an extremely strong supporter of the caucus convention system. We are in a republic, and that is what we have set up. For those people who want to get signatures, that route always was there. If they want to run on something other than the Republican platform, they can go and get signatures. When this was first brought to the party, I was in the state central committee, and we were told that if any part of it was found to be illegal, it would not stand. Then it was taken back and it was changed at the legislature so that that provision was not in there. When we found part of it not to be legal, that part was dropped, but not the rest, as we had been promised it would be. I think getting signatures does a lot of damage to our republic, and I would definitely want to have it repealed.
Hey, thank you. This next question is a really simple one. Do you support President Trump's reelection? Elizabeth.
Yes, I do. I like the fact, we for years have said we need to have politicians that are just, we can tell what they're doing and they're transparent. My gracious, we haven't had more transparent president in my years of life as he is.
Hey, thank you. Representative Miles.
I absolutely support his reelection. I think always know where you stand. He is transparent, and look what he's done for the economy. Look at and just imagine if we had a chance to have both houses again. If the Republican Party had both houses, the policies. I mean, if for no other reason, the Supreme Court nominees, he's done exactly what he said he would do. I don't always agree with how he goes about doing it. He's a little bit caustic, and that raises some concerns. But as far as saying and doing what he says he was going to do, and the benefit to this country, and what he's done for the state of Utah, to cut back Bears Ears and Escalante, and I mean, he's a champion for the state of Utah, and he deserves to be reelected.
I don't usually share too much of my opinion on these things, but I need to echo what you just said. Having served on our Senate, federal staff while all of that was happening, I served under both the Obama administration and then the incoming Trump administration, and I can't tell you how different that experience was, going from an administration that refused to talk to us to one where I was literally on the mountain with the Secretary of the Interior, introducing him to the tribal elders from Utah at Bears Ears, and having him not just listen, but want to see the areas that we were talking about, and on horseback go up the hill with me so that I could explain to him why it mattered to our constituents in the state of Utah. It was a dramatic contrast for us as delegation staff, certainly, but I think more importantly to the citizens of the state of Utah, especially in rural Utah, whose lives are so directly affected by that. So whatever concerns you might have had about the president prior to his election and that campaign, and I've been extremely grateful for the response of his administration to our needs as a state as well. So anyway, that's on the record. Sorry to hijack your your Meet the Candidate night for just a minute, but I appreciate you providing me that opportunity nonetheless. For the last thing we have to wrap up here today is to give you a chance to share with us. Maybe it's a question I haven't asked you. Maybe it's something you've heard from delegates that you feel like needs to be addressed. Whatever you'd like to share with us for these final 3 minutes that you'd like our delegates to remember about you or your candidacy, this campaign, the issues that we face. We'll go ahead and give you, again, those final 3 minutes to wrap up. We'll go ahead and start this time with Elizabeth. Elizabeth?
Well, I believe that we do best when we're freest. And I think I have a very good background. I have had a very rich life experience-wise. And I am really concerned fiscally with our state right now because of the economical problems that this virus has brought to us. I would like to see us take a real close look at what things we are doing and start being more able to do for ourselves. We have a rich history of being self-reliant, and we need to keep up with that history. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Representative Miles.
First, let me say thank you so much for this opportunity and for the Weber County Republican Party and Ryan for you moderating this. It's wonderful to be able to speak how we feel and answer some of these questions. I mentioned to start with that I ran for this office originally because I wanted to help and share these great principles that I hold dear to me and that the Republican Party supports. And I'm grateful for the opportunity that I've had for the past 4 years and would love to be able to continue for the next 2 years. I think that I bring the unique ability to listen and to analyze and to help solve the problems that we're faced with. This COVID-19 is a great example of the type of problems that come out of nowhere. 10 years ago, we wouldn't have realized or didn't realize the kind of budget issues and structural issues we've had. But Utahns are great people, and the citizens of District 11 and constituents of our district, Weber and Davis County, are phenomenal. And to have the opportunity to represent them and to listen to them and to make the difference, I'm very grateful and I'm very humbled by. And I'm thankful for that opportunity and hope to be able to continue to do it. Thanks again, Ryan.
Hey, thank you both. We do have one final question for you tonight that we didn't tell you about. And we sort of did that on purpose. But we want to hear from you your favorite restaurant in Weber County and your favorite dish at that restaurant. Elizabeth, what you got?
Oh, I like Bangkok Gardens on Grant, and they have a curry dinner that is really sumptuous, very good.
Okay, that sounds good to me right now. I haven't had dinner yet. Okay, so Bangkok Gardens on Grant and curry sounds wonderful. Okay, Kelly?
So my favorite is gone, Utah Noodle, Uncle Leo's Utah Noodle. Oh my gosh. I saw a post on Facebook that someone was asking for the recipe for rice, and I've had the opportunity to represent the Iseki family, and so I'm going to see if we can't figure that out. But I'd have to say Tony's Pizzeria. Growing up and going to Bonneville High School, and I mean, there's just nobody that can match Tony's Pizza and the pasta that you can get there. And so I find myself craving that more than anything. We've got some wonderful restaurants in Weber County and Davis County too.
That's right. So that reminds me, we have some Davis County folks that'll be interested in this. There just aren't that many good restaurants in Davis County. I don't know. I feel bad for them.
There are.
I'm just kidding. But in this uncertain time right now, I know many of our restaurants and small businesses are struggling. We'd like to help out just a little bit. So the first delegate, it has to be a delegate that's actually one of your delegates. So the first state delegate from this district that emails Weber County GOP at gmail.com with the correct answers to their favorite restaurants and dishes in Weber County will get a $20 gift card to whichever restaurant they pick. So
Awesome.
if you bothered listening all the way to the end and paying attention to this, you shall be rewarded, and hopefully you'll spend a little bit more than the $20 at the restaurant along the way. So thanks again. We really do appreciate you listening in tonight. Thank you to our candidates, Representative Kelly Miles and Elizabeth Carlin. You are both wonderful candidates. We are so proud to have such good choices from our county, and we appreciate your service and your willingness to serve, and look forward to our upcoming election process here in a few weeks. So thanks again for jumping on tonight. Again, this is Ryan Wilcox and Jake Sawyer for the Weber County Republican Party. This has been the District 11. What are we calling this again, Jake? The virtual Meet the Candidate Night. Thanks again, and best of luck to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.